I never met an evil person, only people who had lost their perspective. This is a quote from Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. He talks about this idea that we become the embodiment of our thoughts. And when you read his work, he's not talking about some esoteric spiritual thing. He's talking about what happens in the human condition. What he's saying is this: you become the thoughts that you think. This is why so many of us feel like our thoughts control us, because our thoughts become our perspective, and our perspective becomes our behavior. So here's the question: how do we shift our perspective? Well, we have to understand first what Marcus means by the soul becoming dyed with the color of its thoughts. That's exactly what's happening in this process. Your thoughts are the dye that stains the cloth of your being, and eventually it filters down to the way that you see the world. And if you want to change the way you see the world, you have to change the way you think. We all know this intellectually. It's the basis for affirmations. It's the basis for the power of belief. But I don't think many of us really internalize it. If you think fear, anger, or resentment, that's the lens you're going to be living through. And this is why we find people who are angry at everyone else around them. They're not like that. You're literally the common denominator. The only constant in their life is them. And so they filter the world through their anger. And if you think gratitude, strength, and clarity, then that's the lens you get to choose. And this is why the Stoics would always talk about the importance of thinking health, thinking wealth, thinking right action, because the perspective you set is the perspective you live in. When Epictetus talks about the dichotomy of control, he is telling us that there are certain things that are up to us, and there are certain things that are not. But we often confuse the two, and we make the mistake of getting upset about things that are out of our control. When we do that, we're shifting our perspective away from ourselves. We're projecting our thoughts onto the world around us, and believing that those things cause our emotions. But really, the only thing that causes our emotions is the way we interpret the events that happen to us. And so the key to shifting our perspective is to bring our thoughts back to the things that are in our control. We accept the things that we can't change, and we focus on the things we can. We take full responsibility for our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, and then we stop getting upset about the things that are out of our control. And this is how we shift our perspective. This is how we change the color of our soul. In his book, Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins tells the story of how, during Navy SEAL training, he taped the words "tough guy" over the word "quit" written on a sign above the bathroom door. Every time he went to the bathroom, he was confronted with the reminder that quitting was not an option. He had to tough it out. He was rewiring his perspective by force, because he knew that if he could shift his thoughts, his actions would follow. He was rewiring his perspective by force, because he knew that if he could shift his thoughts, his actions would follow. And he knew that if he could do that, it would change his behavior. We have to remember that we are creatures of habit, or creatures of perspective. And when we change the way we see the world, we change the way we behave. We can use that to our advantage. If you want to change the way you see the world, you have to understand what the Stoics mean when they say that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. It's not just a figure of speech. It's a description of a process that happens in all of us. Our thoughts become our perspective, and our perspective becomes our behavior. And so if we want to change our behavior, we have to start with our thoughts. We have to ask ourselves, are the thoughts I'm thinking about right now the thoughts I want to dominate my soul? Because if they are, that's the lens I'm going to be seeing the world through. And if I see the world through a lens of fear, anxiety, anger, bitterness, resentment, then that's the world I'm going to be living in. But if I see the world through a lens of gratitude, of strength, of love, of service, that's the world I'm going to be living in as well. One of the most valuable lessons that I learned studying Stoic philosophy is that I have more power over my emotions than I thought I did. And I think we all have that tendency. We think that things outside of us control our emotions. We think other people's behavior controls our emotions. We think our past, our childhood, the traumas that we've experienced, the adversities we've gone through, we think all those things control us. But when we learn how to manage our perspective, we realize that we're actually the ones in the driver's seat. We're the ones who get to decide what things mean. And when we learn that, it's incredibly freeing. It's also incredibly humbling, and it's very scary. The Stoics were aware of this power of perspective, and that's why they spent so much time writing about it. Marcus Aurelius writes about it in Meditations. Seneca writes about it in his letters. Epictetus writes about it in his manual. Even Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, His big breakthrough moment comes when he realizes that he has more power over his thoughts than he thought he did. And that's what kicks off his journey of studying under the Persian philosopher Crates. And that's what leads him to write the very first book on Stoic philosophy. So this is something that's been at the core of this philosophy from the very beginning. And so if you want to change your perspective, you have to spend 1 week noticing the thoughts that dominate your mind. I challenge you to do that. Noticing the thoughts is the first step to changing them. And you do that by setting reminders in your calendar, grabbing a piece of paper and writing them down. Just notice them. Don't try to change them yet. Just observe them. And after a week, look at the list and ask yourself, are these thoughts darkening my perspective or lightening it? It's time to shift them. And the way you shift them is by asking yourself, is this thought helpful? Is it true? Is it in my control? If the answer is no, then it's time to change it. And you do that by repeating a new thought over and over again until it becomes the dominant thought in your mind. You affirm it, you write it down, you carry it around with you, you make it a part of your daily routine. Eventually, that thought becomes the filter through which you see the world. And when you change that thought, you change your perspective. When you change your perspective, you change your life. You probably didn't need me to tell you that your thoughts determine your life. You already knew that intellectually. But I hope that this exercise helps you to see it in practice. See it in action. See it in your everyday life. See it in the way you see the world around you, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's why I think this is such an important lesson to keep in mind. So if you want to change your perspective, spend 1 week noticing the thoughts that dominate your mind. Observe them, shift them, repeat the new thought. Change your thoughts, you change your perspective, change your life. If this lesson resonated with you, give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe so you don't miss the next lesson. Together, we're remembering the wisdom that changes lives.